What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sincere here, back with another Tom Clancy's The Division vendor reset video. Let's get right into it and see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, we're going to head over to Camp Hudson. And here the weapons vendor has a loud vent break with 19% crit hit damage, 6% headshot damage, and 2.50% stability. And for our next gear item, we're still at Camp Hudson, and the gear vendor here has a prototype performance mod for those guys that love to run turrets. It's got 6.50% turret health. Okay, and for our next gear items, we're going to head over to the base of operations. And here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a lightweight M4 with a gear score of 267. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Determined, Intense, and Prepared. It's probably nothing that I would run with on a DPS build, but for a skill build, I would definitely run it for that Determined and Intense, and I would probably roll off that Prepared and put maybe Talented on it on a skill build, a healer build. Okay, and for our next gear items, we're still at the base operations, and here the weapons vendor at the front has a vertical grip FDE with 48.50% optimal range, 2% accuracy, and 4% crit hit damage. Also here, the gear vendor at the base operations at the front has a prototype firearms mod with 261 firearms and 3007 skill power. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations, and the advanced weaponry vendor has a extended magazine with 120% magazine size, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 5% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the special equipment vendor. Here they have a pecan if you like to run a pecan with a gear score of 276. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover. This is definitely a PvE weapon. Talents it has on it is Vicious, Swift, and the third talent Pecan. If I was to run something like this for a PvE mission, I would definitely roll off that Swift and put something else there that I want. Also here we got a Liberator here with a gear score of 263, 23% enemy armor damage. This is something I would definitely use probably for PvE if I didn't, because I have lightweights and Lovas, so I don't use Liberator. But this particular one has skilled, brutal, and adept. And then also here we got an historian. If you like to run historian here for some PvE missions, I see people even using it in some PvP fights sometimes. But this particular one got a gear score of 264. It has 145% headshot damage, and the talents it has is fierce, cool-headed, and historian repeats. Also here we have a military P416 with a gear score of 264, 23% enemy armor damage for those guys still running PvE missions. And the talents this one has is capable, competent, and vicious. Also here we have a Spec Ops mask with the talent Tenacious on it with a gear score of 281. It has 976 armor. It's rolled for electronics, 1224. And the talents it has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we have some gunslinger gloves with the talent Savage on there with a gear score of 272. The armor is 918 and it's rolled for stamina 1205, and the attributes it has is crit hit chance, pistol damage, and LMG damage. I would definitely use these with a LMG build and roll off that pistol damage and put crit hit damage. Also here we have prototype stamina mod with 263 stamina and 2.50% exotic damage resilience. Get these if you want to reduce that bleed against them preds out here in the DZ. Also here we have a prototype performance mod with 7.50% support station duration for those reclaimer builds. For the next gear items, we're going to head over to the meat locker. And here the weapons vendor has a classic AK-47 for those guys that love to run those AKs. This one has a gear score of 279. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is prepared, responsive, and unforgiving. I would definitely roll up that prepared and put something there that I want if I was to use this AK. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the cavern. And here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 2% post crit hit chance for those post builds. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Kerman Station. And here the weapons vendor has a small grip red with 19% crit hit damage, 2.50% stability, and 4.50% reload speed. And for our next gear items, we're going to head over to Camp Clinton. And here the special equipment vendor has a Liberator with a gear score of 269. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and it has the talent Swift, Prepared, and Determined in the bottom talent. And make that work how you want to make that work. Thought I mentioned it though for those PvE guys. Also here the special equipment vendor has a police UMP 45 with a gear score of 281. It has 20.50% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is skilled, ferocious, and ambusher for those PvE builds. And you ain't got nothing better than a house. And then also here we have a Lova C with a gear score of 256. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is focused, adept, and ferocious for those PvE missions. And also here the special equipment vendor has a gunslinger's vest with the talent vigorous on it. The gear score on it is 278. It has 1970 armor. It's roll for electronics 1216, and the attributes it has is all resistance, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. Also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savage on there with the gear score of 279. It has 985 armor, and it's roll for stamina 1253. And the attributes it has is SMG damage, crit hit damage, and skill haste. I think this is a really good roll if you need some Savage gloves with SMG damage. I know a lot of people that need these particular ones. I would take off that skill haste and put crit hit chance. And for our next gear items, we're going to head over to Dante's Run. And here the gear vendor has an operator's vest with the talent Rapid on it. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 1956. It's roll for firearms 1211. And the attributes it has is 5% enemy armor damage, 10% exotic damage resilience, and 50% ammo capacity. And then also we got a prototype firearms mod with 261 firearms and 3% signature ability resource gain. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Wolf's Den. And here the weapons vendor has a first wave Vector 45 ACP. For those guys that still love to run vectors, if that's even a thing, and if you're doing some PvE missions maybe and don't have nothing better than the house, either way. But this one has a gear score of 262. It has 19% crit hit chance, and it has the talents Fierce, Adept, and Accurate. So this will definitely go good for a build with some electronics. Also here, we have a 552 Hollow Sight 10 with 7.50% crit hit chance, 5% optimal range, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Autumn's Hope. And here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5% support station healing speed for those reclaimer builds. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Madison's stand. And here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 3.50% ballistic shield damage for those D3 builds. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the last call. And here the weapons vendor has a Tyrant Suppressor with 7% crit hit chance, 4% crit hit damage, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the Ward. And here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 7% support station range for those reclaimer builds. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the Firewall. Here the gear vendor has Gunslinger's vest with the talent Vigorous on it. It has a gear score of 262. The armor is 1719. It's roll for stamina 1114. And the talents it has is all resistance, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. And here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5% first aid ally heal. The ones I have for my healer builds are 5.50%. But I think this will work if you don't have them at all. You definitely need these for a healer build though, in my opinion. For our next gear item, we're going to head over to the Crypt. And here the weapons vendor has an MP7 with a gear score of 264, 23% crit hit chance, and it has the talents of Dominant and Destructive and Adept, Mentioning this for PvE missions, and you like to run that MP7 because it has that destructive on there, and you got adept in the bottom talent, so you're free to roll that dominant for something you want there. For our next gear item, is going to head over to West 31st checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And in here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 7.50% ballistic shield health for those defense builds. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to West 34th Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 3.50% Seeker Mine damage. And then also we have an extended magazine with 112.50% magazine size, 5% reload speed, and 2.50% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to West 42nd Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And in here, the Dark Zone vendor has a police M4 for those guys that like to run this weapon. It has a gear score of 267, 19% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is accurate, competent, and focused. And then also we have a prototype performance mod with 3.50% turret damage. For our next gear item, is going to head over to West 46th Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And in here, the Dark Zone vendor has some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. It has a gear score of 266, 855 armor. Let's roll for electronics, 1240. And it has the attributes, crit hit damage, health on kill, and crit hit chance. For our next gear item, is going to head over to West 53rd checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 4% ballistic shield damage. And then also here we have a loud vent break with 18% crit hit damage, 2.50% stability, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 64th Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone gear mod vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 266 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. I use these, and if you ain't got them with that crit hit chance on there, I suggest grabbing some. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 42nd Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone vendor has a M700 tactical with a gear score of 276. It has 171 headshot damage, and the talents it has is fierce, toxic, and elevated. I would probably definitely use this for some PvE. And then also here we have a tactical pack with the talent specialized on it. It has a gear score of 270 with armor 1163. It's roll for electronics 1258, and it has the attributes of skill power and bleed resistance. And then also we have a prototype performance mod with 7% Seeker Mine explosion radius. And then also here we have a heavy magazine spring with 4% crit hit damage, 3% crit hit chance, and 11% rate of fire. For our next gear item, we're going to head over to East 40th Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone vendor has a classic RPK 74 for those guys that like to run the LMGs. This particular one has a gear score of 279. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover. And it has sustained, the talent sustained, competent, and fierce. So I mention this because with that competent and fierce and a build with a little bit of electronics, you might can roll off that sustain if you don't need it. Then also here we got another spec ops pack with a gear score of 272. The armor is 1317. It's roll for electronics 1124, and the attributes it has is health and burn resistance. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical MK16 for those guys that still running PvE. If I was to use this is definitely what I would use it for. This particular one has a gear score of 280. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is fierce, brutal, and prepared. And then also here we got a tactical mask with the talent Tenacious on it. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1916, and its roll for firearms 1229. And the attributes it has is enemy armor damage and burn resistance. For our next gear item, is going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint in the Dark Zone. And here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical AUG A3P with a gear score of 280. and 21% crit hit chance. And the talents it has is adept, swift, and talented. Anybody out there still running SMGs and you got a little electronics on your build, you could probably make this work. Take off that swift. And then also here we have a prototype performance mod with 5% sticky bomb explosion radius. And then also here we got a loud vent break with 18% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear item, it's going to head over to the Fifth Ave checkpoint in the Dark Zone. In here, the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical Super 90 SBS. I would definitely use this for some PvE missions with a 6-piece striker set. And this particular one has a gear score of 263. It has 307 stagger. And the talents it has is ferocious, competent, and destructive. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ2 safe room. And here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on it. It has a gear score of 265. It has 896 armor. Its roll for electronics 1148, and the talents it has is enemy armor damage and burn resistance. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ8 safe room. In here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent refreshed on it. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 980, and its roll for electronics 1174. And the talent attributes it has is all resistance and disorient resistance. And also here we have a Spec Ops armor chest piece with the talent reckless on it. It has a gear score of 268. The armor is 1767. Its roll for stamina 1151. And it has the attributes of all resistance, health, and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ9 safe room. And here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 118% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 5% rate of fire. Also here we have a large suppressor FDE with 19% crit hit damage, 5% optimal range, and 2.50% stability. And then also here we got a vertical grip with 47.50% optimal range, 2.50% stability, and 5% reload speed. Okay, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. I want to thank everybody who tuned into it. I hope it was able to help you out and finding some gear for you, whether you're playing PvE or PvP or both. Thank you, and smash that sub button if you hadn't subscribed. Drop me a like too if you hadn't done that also. Check me out on Twitch too. I stream on Twitch too sometimes under the same name, Sensational Sincere. Thank you for that support, everybody, and I'll holler at y'all with the next one. Take care. Peace.